And hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Now, in politics, there's a particular kind of silence that's more dangerous than any attack. It's the silence of a leader whose own side has stopped defending him, and right now, that silence is closing in around Keir Starmer. Because here's a number that should stop you in your tracks: 97. 97 Labour MPs, members of his own party, people who sit behind him, people whose careers he's supposed to lead, have now publicly called on the Prime Minister to either resign or set out a date for his exit. Not whispered it in a corridor, put their names to it. After the party got hammered in the local elections, the knives didn't just come out, they came out in broad daylight. And waiting in the wings? A man who isn't even in Parliament yet, but who half the cabinet seems to think should be running the country. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. A by-election has been engineered. An actual sitting MP stood down purely to clear him a path back into the Commons so he can mount a challenge. This is a coup in slow motion, and it's happening in real time. So before we dig in, drop this in the comments right now. One word, yes or no. Do you think Keir Starmer will still be Prime Minister by the end of this year? Yes or no? I genuinely want to see what you're all predicting, because Westminster has clearly already made up its mind. Because once you see how this has been set up, you'll understand why his own MPs think he's finished. Let's get into it. Let's do the bit you need to actually understand this, because what's happening to Starmer is one of the oldest and most brutal stories in British politics, and there's a playbook for it. First, the jargon, because it matters. When you hear that MPs want the PM to set out a timetable for his departure, that's the polite Westminster code for go, but let us manage how. It's the velvet plug on the dagger. And the thing that makes a Prime Minister vulnerable to it isn't the public, it's his own MPs. In our system, the party can remove its leader without you ever getting a vote. The public elected a Labour government in 2024. The public did not get to choose whether Starmer or somebody else leads it. That's an internal party matter, which is exactly why these coups happen behind closed doors. Now, the trigger. This all detonated after the 2026 local elections, where Labour took a hammering, losing ground in its heartlands, with reforms surging in exactly the kind of working-class seats Labour used to own. For a party that won a landslide less than 2 years ago, that's a 5-alarm fire. And in politics, nothing loosens loyalty like the smell of defeat. MPs who'll lose their own seats at the next election start doing the maths, and the math says, change something, fast. Here's the question worth sitting with. A man wins one of the biggest majorities in modern history in 2024, and by 2026, nearly 100 of his own MPs want him gone. How does a mandate that huge evaporate that fast? That collapse tells you something deeper than any one bad week. And here's the historical echo you should know. We have been here before, repeatedly. The Conservatives spent their years in power treating the leadership like a revolving door. Every time things got hard, they knifed the person at the top and reached for a new one. Cameron, May, Johnson, Truss, Sunak, a procession. Labour swore it would be different. The fascinating thing about this moment is that one of the few people warning against it is one of Starmer's own ministers. And we'll come to what he said because it's sharper than anything the opposition managed. This is the backdrop: a wounded PM, a panicking party, and a challenger circling. Now let's break down exactly how the trap has been laid. So let's go through how this coup has actually been assembled, because it's been done with real cunning. Point 1. The engineered by-election. Here's the move that tells you how serious this is. Andy Burnham is the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He is not a Member of Parliament, and under Labour's own rules, you cannot run for the party leadership unless you sit in the Commons. So how do you get a mayor into Parliament between general elections? You need a seat to fall vacant, and one did. A sitting Labour MP, Josh Simons, resigned the Makerfield seat, stood down from Parliament entirely to clear the path for Burnham to run there. Let that sink in. This is the first time since 1965 that a by-election has been triggered specifically to hand a seat to someone outside Parliament. An MP gave up his job so a more powerful man could take it. That's not a coincidence, that's a launchpad. Ask yourself, does that sound like a party at ease with its leader, or a party already building the stage for his replacement before he's even gone? Point 2. The Cabinet's open flirtation. Normally, when a leader's under pressure, the Cabinet closes ranks. Publicly, at least, they back the boss. What's extraordinary here is how many senior figures have been seen on Burnham's campaign trail, and how openly allies talk about his coronation as leader if he wins the seat. Coronation. That's the word being used, about a man who hasn't won anything yet. When cabinet ministers are out campaigning for the man widely seen as the challenger, the message to the PM is unmistakable: we're already looking past you. Point 3. The warning shot from inside. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because not everyone in the cabinet is playing along. Peter Kyle, the business secretary, fired what everyone read as a thinly veiled shot straight at Burnham. His line: entitlement is not a qualification for leadership. Now decode that. He's saying the quiet part out loud, that Burnham's whole pitch rests on a sense that the job is owed to him, that he's next in line by right. And Kyle went further, and this is the part that should make every viewer sit up. He warned that Labour was repeating the exact mistake the Conservatives made in office, believing that every time there was a problem, changing the leader at the top would fix it. He said, bluntly, that the challenges a government faces are about its programme, not their frontman, and that leadership is not one person. That's a Labour minister publicly admitting his own party is sliding into the same leadership merry-go-round that destroyed the Conservatives' credibility. That's not spin, that's a confession. Point 4. The man himself, rewriting history before he's won.
And then there's Burnham's own behaviour, which tells you everything about the mindset. In an interview this week, he floated the idea that Brexit itself might have turned out differently, that Britain might not have voted leave if he had been Labour leader back in 2016 instead of Jeremy Corbyn. Now, pause on that. This is a man who lost that 2015 leadership contest heavily. Corbyn beat him by 60% to 19%, and here he is a decade later, not yet back in Parliament, suggesting he personally could have changed the single biggest political event of our lifetime. He hedged it, he half laughed it off, he even quoted his own partner saying maybe it would have been different, but he said it. And that's the tell, isn't it? This is the confidence, some would say the entitlement, of a man who already believes the top job is his. He's not campaigning to win a seat, he's auditioning to rewrite history. So I'll ask you straight, is that the swagger of a future Prime Minister, or a man getting ahead of himself before he's won a fertile Makerfield?
Let's zoom out, because this is bigger than one man's ambition, and the comparison is damning. For years, we all watched the Conservative Party tear itself apart at the top. 5 prime ministers in 8 years. Every crisis met with the same answer. Not let's fix the policy, but let's change the leader. And what did it get them? Total collapse of public trust, and eventually a landslide defeat. Voters concluded the Tories cared more about who sat in the big chair than about running the country. That was the lesson. And here's the punchline. Labour is now doing the exact same thing. The party that watched the Conservatives implode through serial regicide is reaching for the identical playbook the moment things get hard. Peter Kyle saw it. That's literally what he warned about. The difference is, his own colleagues don't seem to be listening. So here's the take I'll put my name to. The Burnham coup isn't a sign of Labour's strength, it's a sign it's learned absolutely nothing. Swapping Starmer for Burnham doesn't fix rising unemployment, it doesn't fix the welfare bill they can't reform, it doesn't fix the reform surge eating their heartlands, it just changes the face on the poster, and a new face on the same failing programme is not a plan, it's a distraction dressed up as a solution. And here's why this matters to you sitting at home. While Westminster spends the next month obsessing over a leadership soap opera, who's up, who's down, who's circling whom, nobody is governing. Every ounce of energy poured into this internal knife fight is energy not spent on your bills, your services, your community. A party at war with itself is a government asleep at the wheel, and the country drifts while they squabble over the steering wheel. That's the real cost of a coup, not the drama, the paralysis. So here's where I land. 97 of his own MPs want him gone. A seat's been cleared for his challenger. His cabinet is openly campaigning for the man tipped to replace him. And that challenger is so confident he's rewriting Brexit history before he's even won the by-election on June 18th. Whatever you think of Starmer, this is a Prime Minister whose own party has stopped believing in him. So tell me, does Starmer survive the year, or is Burnham already measuring the curtains? Drop your prediction in the comments. I read them all. Smash the like, hit subscribe so we can follow this one right to the end, and I'll see you in the next one.